Good morning, everyone. I am Samudragupta, and my topic is New Empires and Kingdoms. Arvind was supposed to be acting as Samudragupta, a famous ruler of dynasty from as the Guptas. We know about Samudragupta from a long inscriptions inscribed on the Ashokan pillar at Allahabad. It was composed as a kavya by Harisena, who was the poet and minister at the court of Samudragupta. This inscription is of special kind of known as the Prashasti, the Sanskrit word meaning the praise of, in praise of, while Prashastis were composed for some of rulers you read about in chapter number 9, such as Gautami Putra, Sri Shatakarni, they became far no important from the time of Guptas. The Prashasti was composed in very long sentences. Here is part of one such sentences, whose body was most charming, being covered with the plenty- planet plenteous beauty of marks of hundred of scares caused by battle axes, arrows, prickles, spear, barbade, darts, swords, iron club, javelins, barbade arrows, long arrows, and many other weapons. The rulers of Arvata Aryavarta, the areas shaded in green on the map. Here you can see in the NCERT book. Here there were 9 rulers who were uprooted of their kingdoms to made part of Samudragupta's empire. The rulers of Dakshinapatha here, there the 12 rulers, some of these capitals and marks as the red dots of the map. Thus, the surrendered to Samudragupta after being defeated and he been allowed to be the rule again. The inner circle of the neighboring state, including Assam, coastal Bengal, Nepal, and number of the Ganashanghas in the northwest marks the purple on the map. They brought tribute follow his orders to attend his court. The rulers of the outlying areas marked in blue on the map, perhaps the descendants of Kushans and Shaks, and the ruler of the Sri Lanka who submitted to him and offered daughters in marriage. Most Prashastis also mention the ancestors, the ruler. This one mention Samudragupta's great grandfather and mother. His mother, Kumara Devi, belonged to the Lichavi Gana, which his father Chandragupta was the first ruler of Gupta dynasty to adopt the grand title of the Maharaja Dhiraj, a title that Samudragupta is also used. His great grandfather are mentioned simply the Maharajas. It seems to be finally gradually rose to importance. Samudragupta in turn figures in the generalized the latter rules of the dynasties such as his son Chandragupta II. We know about him inscriptions and coins. He led the expeditions the Western India and overcome the last of Shakas. While we can learn about the Gupta rulers from the inscriptions and the coin, we can find about some kings for biographies. Hari Harshavardhana, who ruled nearly 1400 years ago, was one such ruler. He court poet Banabhatta wrote his biography to Harshacharita in Sanskrit. This gives the general of Harsha and ended with his becoming king. Harsha was not the eldest son of father, but became the king, the tenure after both his father elder brother died. His brother-in-law was to the ruler of Kanauj. You can see the map 7 in your NCERT book. And he was killed. The ruler Bengal, Harsha took over kingdom of Kanauj and then led army against the ruler of Bengal. Although he was successful and east and conquered Magadha and probably Bengal also, he was not as successful as elsewhere. He tried to cross the Narmada to march into Deccan but was stopped by a ruler belonging to the Chalukya dynasty. Pallavas and Chalukyas were the most important ruling dynasty in the South India during this period. The kingdom of the Pallavas spread from the region around the capital of Kanchipuram to Kaveri Delta, while that the Chalukyas was centered around the Rachur Doab between the rivers of Krishna and Tungabhadra. You can see the eye hole. Uh, the capital of Chalukyas, was an important trading center. It developed to the religious center with a number of the temples, and Pallavas Chalukyas frequently raided one another's land, especially attacking the capital cities, which were purposes towns. Ravikirti. According to the Ravikirti, he led to the expeditions along both the west and the east coast. Besides, he checked the advance of Harsha. There is an interesting play of the word in the poem. Harsha means happiness. The poet say after this defeated, Harsha was no longer Harsha. Pulokeshi also attacked the Pallav king, who took shelter behind the walls of Kanchipuram. As in case of earlier kings, land revenue remained important for these rulers, and village remained the basic unit of the administration. There were some new developments as well. Kings adopted a number of the steps with support of men who were powerful, either emotionally or socially or because of their political and military strength. Some important administrative posts were now hereditary. This means that sons succeeded fathers to this post. For example, the poet Harishena was the Mahadanda Nayak or chief judicial officer like his father. Beside important of the main, probably he had said the local administration. This included Nagar Nagarashishiti, or chief banker of merchant of the city, the Shatavaha, or leader of merchant caravans, the Prathama Kulika, or the chief craftsman and head of the castes of scribe. A new king of army. Like early rulers, some of these kings maintained as the well-organized army with elephant chariots and cavalry and foot soldiers beside were military leaders who provided the king to troops while he needed them that they were not paid regular salaries. Instead, some of this the receive of the grants land, and they collected revenue from the land. Use of this maintained soldiers of the house of the provide equipment for welfare. Assemblies in the southern kingdom. The inscriptions of the Pallavas mentions the number of the local assemblies. This included the Sabha, which was the assemblies of the Brahmin landowners. This assembly functioned through subcommittees which looked after irrigation, agriculture, operation, making roads, local temples. The our village assembly found the areas where the landowners were not Brahmins and the Nagaram Nagaram was and the organization of the merchant. It is like is themselves assemblies were controlled by the rich powerful landowners and merchants. We can catch an organized occasional glimpse to the of the lives of ordinary people from plays and other accounts. Let us look at some of this. Kalidas is known as the plays depicting life in the king's court. And interesting features about this place that is the king and the most Brahmins are shown as the speaking Sanskrit while women and men other kings and Brahmins use Prakrit. He is the most famous play Abhigyanam Sakuntalam in the story of the love between the king named Dushmanta and the young woman Shakuntala. The Chinese pilgrims Fahian noticed that the plight of those who were treated as untouchables by the high and the mighty. They were expected to leave the outstrike of the cities, he writes. If such a man enters a town to the market, he strikes a piece to wood in order to keep himself separate. People hearing this sound now it means to avoid touching him, to brushing against him. The king's army. The king traveled with enormous amount of the equipment. A part of the weapons were things is daily use as such as the pots, pans, furniture, golden food including animals such as the goat, deer, rabbit, vegetables, spices carried to cut to pack animals such as the camels and elephants. This huge army was accom- accompanied by the musician beating drums and the other playing horns and drums. Village had to provide hospitality along the way. They came with gifts of cards, and flowers and provide fodder for the animals. Around 1400 years ago, Prophet Muhammad introduced a new religion, Islam, in Arabia. Like the Christianity, Islam was a religion that laid stress on the equality and unity of all before Allah, that one supreme God. Here, he here is a verse from a Quran, the sacred book of Islam. For Muslim men and women to believing, men and women for doubt, devote, men and women for true men and women, for men and women who are patient, for constant, for men and women who humble themselves, for men and women who give the charity, for men and women who fast, for men and women who guarded their chastely, and for men and women who engage much Allah's remembrance for them, and Allah prepared forgiveness and great reward. So that's all for now. Thank you so much. Please keep watching and please subscribe my channel. Till then, goodbye.